Good points. And as long as we're on the topic of data, now's probably a good time to throw out the last question. We'll go around the horn on this one. Let me set it up a little bit. I will have to look at my notes because there's some stats in here. So Gartner is predicting that by 2022, 90% of corporate strategies will explicitly mention information as a critical enterprise asset and analytics as an essential competency. We've got IDC predicting that by 2022, 45% of software companies will deploy commercial usage analytics solutions. In our own Monetization Monitor, the second report that we put out a month or so ago revealed that software suppliers show an ongoing interest in collecting and understanding usage data, with 60% of respondents collecting usage data today and more than 75% planning to do so in the next 2 years. So we'll go around the horn. Vic, we'll start with you. If you had to choose one area to drill into in 2021, and you do have to choose one area since I've got the microphone, which area do you think would yield the greatest return?
Yeah, I would have to say, and again, everything's dependent on the market and the application, but usage analytics, whether you're gathering this yourself or you're just stepping into it, having a level of data on how the products are actually used can be shared amongst multiple profiles. It's not just the product management. It can be a DevOps. It can also be marketing and sales. But just stepping forward to build it in a way that the data is accessible versus building it in a way where you have to rely upon IT or someone to write SQL queries or it's hidden in your network, looking at ways to expose that information and visualize it, and then sharing it amongst your product group. I would have to start there with, as a priority if we had to choose.
Great, and you do have to choose. So Josh, we'll come to you next, and in case Vic took any of your answers, I'll give you a little bit of an out. If you wanted to break it up into sort of a short-term one and a long-term one, that would be interesting to hear too, but whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, in the domain of monetization strategy, pricing, go-to-market, these elements, having done this for almost 20 years, started out as more studies of psychology and the art of pricing, things like that. Over time, I think the science of pricing and monetization has come to the forefront, and we just have access to a lot more data now than we used to. So we tend to say there's kind of attach rate data and kind of transactional data that's the core foundation that was informing a lot of decisions, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, and usage data has become kind of the forefront that separates the higher performing companies from those who are not looking at it. So I think the time is now that is a short-term objective in many of the companies I'm working with to wrap their arms around better usage data. And long-term, it's a good question, but I think long-term, it's applying those not just to sales elements of how do you land an initial sale and cross-sell and upsell, but the longer-term target is how to use that data to optimize your retention strategies. So in a subscription model, how do we inform things like price increase strategy or even resourcing we're throwing at an account based on their underlying usage? I think that's kind of the next frontier of how usage data will be applied.
Thanks. And Eric, how about you? Any thoughts on where you would begin first?
So I don't want it to sound like an echo chamber, but I agree with Josh and Vic. The usage data and the collection touches on so many areas of then figuring out what the next steps need to be. Your usage data is going to give you information about how to price the product. Your usage data is going to give you information about what parts of what functionalities in the product your customer base find the most valuable. And your usage data is also going to give you insight onto some of these piracy and unauthorized usage scenarios, which will then guide how you set policies around your licensing and affect the implementation of the technology. So when we're doing a deployment of the technology, of the Rivenera technology, a couple of the things that we look at, the first is compliance, which is really you've set rules around how your customers are allowed to use the software. Are you selling by seat? Are you selling by user? That sort of thing. And compliance is just measuring, are they doing that, or are they doing something that goes beyond that, the perimeter that you've set? Then the next is enforcement. What do you do in response to that? And how do you monetize in a way that allows you to build that customer up versus just trying to cut them off? It's much better to say, hey, they find value in doing this and using this software. Let's encourage them to actually pay for it versus just trying to cut them off. One of the great examples of this is there's a popular photo editing program that had a very high price point and had a lot of piracy, and then has transitioned to a subscription model, and that has a lower entry point. If somebody wants to go edit 2 pictures, they don't want to fork out hundreds of dollars. But if it's $39 a month or whatever, yeah, maybe they'll pay for a month.